Welcome, John. I'm so glad to have you here. How are you today?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. I'm so honored to have you here. Would you like to share your story with my audience first, please?
I would. Listening to your podcast and hearing you talk so much about growth in business and flourishing, but with this kind of spiritual undertone of my words would be, how do we make ourselves more conscious in business, and how do we make business more conscious, and how do all these things work together? I'm just really honored to be able to speak with you and learn from you about how you see the world. I think my relevant introduction would probably be, I grew up on a small little farm in the middle of America to two PhD therapists, oddly enough. So um, there was a mix of this business world because my parents were very much entrepreneurs. They owned their own small therapy practice in the middle of nowhere. They were also farmers, so extremely risky. So there's this whole business upbringing, but then there's this whole kind of conscious psychological side. So I remember my father's library was filled with books about Buddhism and philosophy and religion. And, I never read any of them actually growing up. But later, I was kicking myself. Like, there was this wealth of wisdom from him in this library about spirituality and religion. And then there was this creative aspect of my upbringing. My dad was a musician. He imparted that to me. I remember my grandmother would sit me down at the piano, and we would practice these songs. So I'd have one or two songs I would get assigned each week, and she'd say, "No, we're going to play the whole book." So
Mhm.
I would sit at this piano until I played them perfectly. So I've always had this music and this creative artistic side of me. And it's been interesting to see how those three have danced as I've entered the business world. So zooming ahead, I've worked in corporate America for 20 plus years. Worked
Mhm.
at the nation's central bank. I've worked in large companies like H&R Block. Most people probably recognize that name. And then worked as a design consultant, helping to do innovation of products and services. And that eventually transitioned into how do we coach and teach leaders how to design and how to create. I think that has shifted even more into how do we coach teams, and how do we help them be more conscious as they're running right at sometimes the greatest fear, their greatest fear and the greatest fear in their company of how do we change, and how do we let go of all these things we have made us successful in the past to relearn who we are, and maybe how to connect with our customers in a new way. So it's a little bit about my upbringing and these kind of three aspects and how they've started to materialize in the business world over the last couple decades.
Do you feel that the upbringing you had a huge impact on you as a person? How do you see growth now after all of these years of experience?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. It has changed so much. I remember when I was in my 20s and I was supervising people, and oh, I was so ignorant.
We
I
all were
mean,
when we were 20s, right?
oh boy, sometimes it's just cringeworthy looking back at some of the stories. But I remember one of my employees coming to me, and I was just so excited. And I said, why would we do anything else? I could just work every single day. This is so much fun. Like, life is about creating impact. And I remember a lot of employees I managed at the time, I would have these impassioned speeches about like what is the impact and your purpose in the world, and how do we really lean into that? And I think that's still there, but that has shifted a lot. I had a period of my life where growth was about
Mhm.
bias. I saw how much unconsciousness people have and employees have in how they design products and services, and how even the need for validation or a fear or things that happened when we were young with our parents, it almost like gets baked into the DNA of these products and services and this digital world we use every day. So, there's this period of growth was about understanding bias and the unconscious suffering that we may design into things. So I carried that war cry for a while.
Mhm.
And then I think the Enneagram and really studying that through the CP Enneagram school, Beatrice Chestnut and Uranio Pace shifted this into, growth is about how do we see reality? Um,
That's deep.
how do how do we move from this lower level personality that we see the world the way we think we see the world into this head, heart, and body perspective that is so much more present and real. Um, and I think that's right. I think, and we may talk about this book a little bit at some point, but I think it's shifted into presence. Is
Mm.
growth is this constant focus of how do we be present and how do we be present with everything that's moving through us.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of that right now is fear. And growth is almost this concept of throughness is how do we move through these things that are happening? There really might not be a destination at all. It's just a constant presence and throughness of the fear we have inside ourselves to see what's really there. So that is a long answer, but that's kind of my evolution of what is growth. And
Actually, it's a very deep answer. Like a lot of people are still unaware, and the consciousness is on a very low level, right? But
yep,
I think we are at the point of awakening and actually like understanding their higher level of consciousness, and that growth doesn't mean just what it means in the corporate world, right?
yep,
It's much more. It's more of a personal growth in the journey we're all in and the experiences we had and how we will deal with all of that. I just heard Mel Robbins saying that positive mindset is not something which will change our lives, but it will change us and our own perception of life. And then it will help us to deal with the situations better.
yep.
What are your thoughts about that?
I do. I think there's resiliency comes to mind.
Mhm.
Um, I think in one way, there's this power of meditation, not to just be in the positivity of it all, to have, meditations where we go into the negative feelings of it. And I think that allows us to be in a state of fear. And I think fear is a very valuable gift. And I think there's so much fear happening that feels like it's increasing in our society. And I think it's a wonderful mechanism to help us pop the bubble to see reality. And I think we have to be in the positive and the negative of it.
Mhm.
I do think going back to your question, I think positive thinking provides this capacity to bounce back, to have this resiliency of saying, okay, I might be in negative emotions and I understand that, but how do I get back through that into a neutral place? I can really see
Mhm.
things clearly. And um, I, for one, I've had periods of my life where I've been in intense negative thinking and ruminations and hypervigilance and having complex PTSD and having that place where sometimes there's so much anxiety and fear that's all you see. And
Mhm.
I think that can tend to create a reality that's just totally consumed by fear, and it's really difficult to see what's on the other side.
I love what you said that the fear is a mechanism. I actually used to say it's a mechanism of our brain which tries to keep us safe
Hmm.
so we can feel comfortable. And
Yeah.
being comfortable, it's not actually the place to grow, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I don't think so. I think that's extremely well said. You know, I think not seeing things or being numb to it is almost an ignorance. You can look at the three poisons from Buddhism, aversion, ignorance, and craving or greed. I think ignorance is a big one. Is how are we ignorant to the feelings and we're just so comfortable in our lives we're numb to what reality really is.
Exactly, exactly. And with everything that's happening now in the world, like it becomes even more, uh, um, I don't know, as you mentioned, we can feel the fear everywhere.
Mhm.
But let's switch to the little bit better side. Like
Yeah,
you
positive
you
thinking,
help, yeah,
positive
yeah,
mindset.
we went deep, but let's go back. You help people hatch in business. How do you help them, and how do you help yourself?
Yeah, that is a amazing question of how do you help yourself is such a hard thing. It
Yeah,
always seems like,
because that was the hardest thing for me. So
oh, me too.
so yeah,
Me
I
too.
guess I guess we went through something similar probably.
Yeah. It is interesting. I am definitely one that am probably an overgiver, and I tend to believe I help everybody else, but sometimes that's just a distraction from actually being with yourself and realizing that there is inner work you need to do.
Yeah, mic drop. Someone finally said that.
Oh yes. Oh boy. Yeah. Giving is such a tricky thing, especially ultra giving. Sorry, I'm going on a tangent, but there's especially in the business world, there's a badge of honor, I think, with over giving. I think it's seen as such a positive thing and such a, you're part of the company and you're doing such a great job, and it's just so rewarded. I think there can be some motivational traps people can get into with over giving. Um, but to get to your question, maybe let me start with how I help other people because this is maybe an
And then we
easier
will go deep. Yeah.
vortex into me. Uh, that's evolved too. It's always been about helping to launch products and services in this kind of innovation, design thinking capability. That's what I've always said I help hatch. I think that's changed. Later, maybe in the last 10 years, it's really been about, how do we design? How do we hatch this design aspect in business? And I think that's very much been the arc of business. We can look at Apple and a lot of products that brought in an appreciation for really good design. I think maybe the last 5 or 6 years has been about like how do we hatch co-creation? Um,
Mhm.
how do we hatch this capacity for people to actually work together? um, and understand what design is inside of ourselves and how it really is a team sport. I think that's kind of another layer I've gotten to. I think where I'm at now is co-creation is such a human quality. And I feel like there is this collective movement of how do we remember what it really means to be human? And I think entering this Aquarian age, it feels like all these things are going into who are we as humans? And I think now I have this deep desire to have people hatch as humans.
Mhm.
And what does that really mean? And I think co-creation is such an important aspect of that. I just got back from Mongolia and was in this kind of shamanistic journey through a lot of Mongolia. And it's so interesting, these Mongolian teachings. And uh, this teaching, I'm probably going to get it a little wrong, but it's about, how do we really behave as humans? And underneath that is what is friendship? And friendship is this deep respect for the co-creative capacity of each person.
Mm.
And there's these five values of friendship that they taught us. And one was how do we respect time? Another was how do we respect knowledge?
Mhm.
Another was energy. The fourth was a path, the path of each person. And the last was the resources or materials people bring. And I'm always taking these trips and learning how different societies behave. And I'm so moved by the simplicity of that is what does it really mean to be human is to respect those. And can we respect those in ourselves? Time, knowledge, energy, path, and materials. And what
That,
does that
that
really
that's the
mean?
first that's the first thought when you said that,
Mhm.
I just thought, do we really respect all of these within ourselves prior to be able to respect it with others in different relationships, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm getting goosebumps. I think that's it. I mean, we always say, do the work inside. There's always a mirror back to us. And how are we really bringing ourselves fully in the world by doing that inner work? And I think those five are a great way to look at your second question is how have I hatched myself through business?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in all this stuff I'm trying to do for other people, it's taking me back to me is how in the world am I a human being? Uh,
I'm asking for a friend.
yeah, yeah, I appreciate that. Yes, but I think it is that question. It's like, who am I as a human, and how do I respect myself as a human? And I would say I've suffered from addiction. Workaholism is one of those. Definitely didn't respect my time as a human being. Knowledge. Oh, I've outsourced wisdom and knowledge to so many people. In the spiritual bypassing part of finding every medium and channel and advisor, where is my own wisdom? Energy, overgiving, path. I've always thought my path was a product of other people's path, but how do you really understand your own unique, individuated path? And then your own materials. I think all of those have been, how do I hatch myself and really like, how do you really be alive as a human being and appreciate the full experience of what you're moving through here? I think very much is what I've been trying to teach other people, which is also reteaching myself at the same point.
And it's beautiful. That's a beautiful cycle. Like all of us who have a mission to help others, we are all growing together, right? Like
Yeah.
at this point, we are co-creating. I'm learning from you. You're not learning so much from me because I'm listening. But
Yeah. Oh,
everyone
oh,
else,
but
yeah, so
yeah.
I'm not giving back enough, but everyone else who will listen to this will definitely learn a lot because you touched so many deep points. I understand you growing up with parents who had PhD in psychology. This is where this comes from, of course.
Mhm. Yeah.
But connecting the not only us as a physical being, but us as a spiritual being living in a physical body, and
Mhm.
making a connection with reality and being present, and then being able to create something and co-create with other people while you are still learning and growing. I believe that's huge. And imagine if everyone on this world lived that way instead of, being in a competition with others, making wars with others like we're witnessing now and things like that. Like I'm still kind of in shock, like how it's possible that humanity, after so many experiences in our history, didn't learn anything. And this is what we touched. Although we try to talk about business, but the conversation always goes a little bit deeper. And
Mhm.
now, when I was in high school, I was in scientific center studying psycholinguistics for 4 years. The
Mhm.
title of your novel made me think a lot. What is behind it, actually? So I wanted to ask you a little bit about that. Please disclose a secret because horribly lovely, like what does that even mean?
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's I so want to put you on. What do you think it means? As you first read it, I'm curious on what came up for you. What was the initial
Well,
reaction?
I thought about accepting yourself just the way you are, even your like shadow side, but
Mhm.
I'm really not sure about it.
Yeah, I think that's a very intuitive answer. I think you're so spot on. Yeah, and maybe before I get into that, I'd love to enter it through how do you see growth? That first question you asked me. How do you see growth after you've gone through your journey?
Oh wow, I went through 40 personal growth programs.
Wow.
From all aspects. Because back in 1999, I actually lived in former Yugoslavia when there was a bombing, and I was 17 years old, finding myself in an underground shelter, not knowing if I'm going to live the next day. So I saw that passing, and I still being here as an opportunity, like a second chance to live. So every single day, I somehow invest in myself and try to bring something good in this world. For me, growth isn't just a material thing. It's much more about growing my own soul and my own heart and mind. So I think we're a lot in alignment with that. And I think we all find each other somehow as light workers or however we want to call us. And whatever we do, although I'm also a business coach, so I'm very realistic and practical, um, I'm trying to make some positive difference in the world. And I think you do the same thing. So
Yeah, I appreciate that. I really love the answer. And you and I have a connection there. My grandparents were the first born here in the United States from Yugoslavia. So
really,
yeah.
you see, yeah. Well, they say a lot of things are in a DNA. So
Mm.
I actually interviewed someone who was researching things like that, and I was pretty much impressed. So I don't know if how much that is truth, but yeah, there is a lot of imprint in us from our ancestors also, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I think that's a wonderful way to get into this book a little bit and the horribly lovely title, which is very paradoxical. Very
Exactly. Very, very paradoxical.
polarizing. Yes. And maybe there's a good story of I finally went to Slovenia last year and I still have relatives there. So 2 weeks, they're taking us everywhere. To the Julian Alps, we're driving. We're traveling everywhere across Slovenia. And Lily, who's kind of an aunt, was driving, and I remember my mother was in the passenger seat and she was driving, and we just felt so guilty that she was taking all this time. And she said, "I want to be with you, Jon. Uh, you are my nephew. I am your aunt. Um, I claim you." And there's something so simple about those words, and it just felt so soft, and it felt like love I had never felt before. So in these like hard Julian Alps, if anybody wants to Google these images, they're like these beautiful, magnificent, spiry mountains. Um, and there's this wonderful nature all around. And Slovenia is a very loving country. And to just hear these words, they just like melted me. And it was the DNA of like my ancestry and how they traveled to America and this hardness they had to face and the hardness that people have gone through wars and trauma and abuse. And when we don't do that work, it just keeps getting passed down. And I could feel such this paradoxical difference between the hardness that was passed down through me and how much it really kept my life in stone. It really froze me for most of my life. And how just this feeling of softness. I could feel Mother Mary kind of in all the land talking to me and just feeling my soul find this softness I could rest on. I think that's one story that's in the book that is very much how you describe growth. That's this soul embodiment is how does your soul come in and you to understand the full depth of your human experience and what you're really learning here. And this book very much is um, all these romantic relationships, but all these travels from around the world of my soul trying to figure out what is my experience and who really am I and what is love. Um, I think in the story there's very much this theme of reparenting is how do we understand this search for home is within ourselves and the father you seek, the mother you seek, is inside of you, and it's reparenting this child that just feels so unloved and unlovable. Um, how do you find ways to do it to yourself? And it it's such a surface layer question to just love yourself, but that is a really, really, really difficult question. Like,
Yeah.
what the heck is love? How do you do that? You can't just like take a salt bath and take a massage and say you love yourself. And there's a whole process to that. And
Yes, and a very deep process, especially if you live through so many things and then you practically need to create a space to heal
yeah,
and to find a connection with your inner self and that inner child so that you really can grow.
yeah,
And these days, as I'm listening to a lot of business leaders, I believe that we are awakening to that fact that we really aren't just in a physical form, and we can build empires even if we are not just after the material things. I believe that we attract what we put out there in the world. And for me, it's much more important that we make a difference and that, as you said, help other people, but with the clear boundaries and everything that goes into that. This was such a lovely conversation. We found so many interesting topics and touched so many deep levels. But if someone would like to reach out or to work with you, tell us a little bit how you can help them and how they can find you.
Yeah, yeah. I've never written a book before, and this book is definitely not a business book. It is my attempt at being a very businessy person with this very spiritual depth. Almost like how do I bring that out in the world to see? So with this book, I don't always know the best ways to launch it in the world. One thing we're trying is a community where you can come and read the book, and with that, you can come to a place where you can talk about what's getting brought up in you. Is hearing this story of reparenting yourself and finding home, and all these kind of traumatic stories that are written in a raw, visceral way.
Mhm.
How does this book give us all permission to really fully experience ourselves and move through this stuff together? Um, it's my first attempt at trying this. So you can go to horriblylovely.com. You can read the book. I think it's going to get launched here in January or February. So if if you get this before, you can go to the website. You can read the early version. You can talk to me. You can talk to each other. You can join Zooms. We can just have a real honest conversation about what our human experience has been. That's probably the best way to reach out and find me, and the thing I'm most passionate about right now.
I will leave the link in the description of this episode, and I will for sure be there because I fell in love with the title right away as I saw it, and I was like,
Yeah,
"What?"
yeah.
It's
It,
so beautiful, actually. Horribly lovely. It's very beautiful.
yeah. How do we embrace these paradoxes of we are soft and we are hard and both contain each other? We are masculine, we are feminine. How do we contain each other? We can be horrible and evil, and we can be lovely and good, and both of those contain each other. Like we are so much more than we give ourselves credit for.
We are so much more. Thank you so much for being my guest. I truly enjoyed, and I hope you did too.
I absolutely did. Thank you so much. It's been an honor. An honor.
Honor is all mine. See you. Bye.
Bye.